A question I was going to answer earlier, and this will be the last question for today. And I'm going to try and do a good job with this. This is the kind of topic that I would normally want a bunch of time to prepare for. But I've had several people ask me about this today, and I will do my best to answer this question. How to deal with procrastination. So, the first thing I need to mention is that so the thing about procrastination and motivation and discipline and all these different things, they are somewhat arbitrarily defined. They're subjective is a better way of talking about it. So one of the when I to ground this with some practical advice. So when I started Android development back in 2014, the biggest issue I had to deal with is that I was a very lazy and ADD and kind of chronically exhausted person. And at the time when I started, I was working full time with split days off. And really the only time I had to learn Android development on top of all that was to wake up really early in the morning and study before I went to work. And over the span of 3 years, I've gotten better at doing that. I've gotten better at doing what I need to do on the days with which it is required of me. So the first thing I must mention about procrastination is that you must have a clearly defined goalpost. So that's the first thing. You need a clearly defined goal. So for example, I want to build an alpha version of my first Android app in 1 month. So let's just assume you have a goal. If you don't have a goal or a specific rubric for success, you need to go and find that. You need to go do that. Because otherwise your brain doesn't really know what to lock onto. So you need a specific criteria for success. So that's number one. Oops. Number two, you need an action plan. So for me, that was for every day I will wake up early, wake up a few hours earlier than normal so that I can learn programming. So we've got our action plan. Get up a couple of days earlier so that I can learn programming, so that I can work on this application. All right, so you've got your action plan. So that's the second step. So we've got our goal. You've got the goal. And then you have steps. If the goal is like a destination that you're walking towards, we've got the destination. Now we're saying, okay, what steps every day can I take? And generally that'll be just study a couple hours. Like if your goal is to lose weight, every day do a walk or a run, that kind of stuff. So you've got your action plan. So most people can make it here. This is not hard to figure out. We're all like fairly intelligent human beings. We all understand, all right, so you need to have a goal before you can improve yourself or achieve something. And of course, you need to have a vague idea of what steps you need to take. This is not a very important thing for me to talk about. What I will talk about, and this is one of the most fundamental concerns of my own personal development, which is on the days when on a given day when it is required of me, and I'll briefly touch on what that means, when it is required of me, how do I make sure that I sit down and get a good amount of work done, whether I want to or not? So one of the, I've talked about this before passingly in posts, but so here's the bane of my existence. The bane of my existence are the days when I wake up with every intention to get a ton of work done. And we all do this, and I'll continue to do this. It happens less and less frequently, and I have tools and resources to deal with this, but what happens on those days when you don't feel like it? Because you're going to get days where you wake up and you're just intrinsically motivated and you get to work and things are great. How do you deal with procrastination? How do you increase the number of days where you are learning and working effectively? So really what it comes down to, in my personal experience, the most important thing you need to realize, and this is so important, is that what I used to do is on a given day when I was feeling bad, on a given day when I wake up and say the previous day I'm like, all right, I'm going to get a shit ton of work done tomorrow. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like ADD, and then I sit down at my computer. Maybe I check my phone and I look, oh, I got a question on Facebook. Then I go to that. Then I try and bring myself back. Oh, I got a program. Crap, procrastinating. And then I look up, okay, today I'm studying the Liskov substitution principle. And then as I'm looking that up, I see an interesting article or an interesting thumbnail. And then I jump to that. And then all of a sudden like 2 hours go by and I've gotten basically fuck all done and nothing done, pardon my language. And that's the situation I'm sitting in. And then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you idiot, like you had all this spare time that you could have used productively, and instead of doing that, you pissed your time away on nonsense. I don't think that is the right perspective. The perspective I take now is when I wake up on a given day where I have that feeling, I do two things. I do many things, but most importantly, two things. Number one, I say to myself, what did I do yesterday to make me feel like this? Because the problem is not that I'm just lacking this magical enthusiasm and then I make this big story about myself like, well, I guess you just don't care about getting your work done. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. In general, the days when I wake up and I feel like crap, I can point to things I did yesterday and the day before which led to me being not very well in the head, in the sense that for me, and you will need to examine your own life and your own, and this is where it gets general, your own dietary issues. Do you work out? Do you drink a ton of sugar? Do you, when you start at the beginning of the day, do you go right into your first primary task? Or do you check Facebook and get distraction momentum going? Because once you check the Facebook thing, your brain's like, oh, Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. when it should be like, oh, Liskov substitution principle. So what I'm trying to say is stop beating yourself up in the sense of making a story like, oh, I guess I'm lazy, I'm useless, I'm this, I'm that. That's bullshit. That is really just bullshit. What you say is, number one, I am going to do better. What did I do yesterday that screwed me up? For me, over the 3 years, I figured out eating a ton of carbs the day before will make me retarded. Pardon my language. I don't find that a very offensive term, but some people do. It will make me ADD and I'll have trouble thinking. The next thing I do, and this is what I will end on to end procrastination. On rare occasion when you wake up on days like that, sometimes you'll be able to sort of reorient yourself and push through. And that's always what you want to do, is you always want to follow through on action item number 1. Let's study the most important thing. If that most important thing is something that's very complicated and your brain is just tired or it's not in the capacity to work with that, what you need to do is you need to now say, okay, looking at this objectively, I've tried repeatedly to focus on this one thing, and I do not today have the focus to get it done. I seem to be procrastinating on this for whatever reason, except that I'm just a bad person. That's never a good reason. I am not able to get this work done. So then you say, okay, what is something that is easier, that still needs to get done, and only takes maybe an hour? So what I will do is, let's say I sit down to work on my room sample and my brain's just elsewhere. I will say, after a little while of trying, okay, I can't do this thing today. What are some easier tasks for me to do? So for me, that's writing. Writing is super easy for me. So then I'll say, all right, before you quit and rest, before you rest up, because obviously you are tired, I want one thing done. One fairly straightforward, simple task that takes maybe an hour, half hour, something like that. And before you give up and rest for the day, that thing gets done. And that is not optional. Once that thing is done, then you say to yourself, okay, do I feel like continuing? Or do I need to rest for today? If you feel like continuing, you can go ahead. If you are still really tired and it's still a struggle, then you say to yourself, my only goal for the rest of today, and this is the end of this diatribe, my only goal for today is to make sure that tomorrow I am adequately rested, I have eaten well, and I have a written plan, and I am ready to do better tomorrow. And that's basically it. So hopefully that was useful to some people. I know I rambled for a very long time. And to be honest, like, I would rather create a very long and dedicated explanation of this whole thing. But if that was useful to some people, great. If not, great too. And thank you so much for watching. It's been a fun episode. And I will see you all later. Peace out. Work hard. Work your ass off. Like C.T. Fletcher says, what is it? ISYMFS. Look up what that means. C.T. Fletcher.